Happy Thursday. We are live, and guys, I'm really pumped for this video today. What do you do if you have a product in market, but you are really struggling to stand out above the competition, or you feel like you're bringing a new product to market, but you have some concerns because you are launching in a super competitive space? What do you do? In today's video, we're going to be covering how you can find product market fit, what is a system that you could use to find product market fit, and why this is something that most big brands don't do until much later to their detriment, and why this is actually something you should start to do in the very beginning. So this video is for you if you are either a new seller and you want to make sure that you gain an edge above the competition earlier rather than later. Number two, maybe you're an existing Amazon seller that's selling product, but you're really struggling to compete. Maybe your product is listed on page 3 or 4, and you really want to make sure that you can either get to that front page or you can start to build a strong brand off of Amazon where you're not competing based on price alone. Either way, this notion of product market fit is exactly what we are going to be covering in today's video. So be sure to take notes and let's get into it. So first off, hey guys, if you are new to my channel, be sure to hit subscribe. We release regular content like this every single week to help you along your e-commerce journey, to help you launch and scale your $1 million brand. So first off, if you aren't new here, who knows? But my name is Khierstyn Ross. I am an e-commerce strategist that has been focused on building D2C brands online for the last 6 years. Got started on Kickstarter with multiple 6-figure launches. And after taking some D2C products in multiple niches from fitness to wearables to tech, we were able to music tech even, we were able to build $1 million brands off of the success of Kickstarter campaigns, product launches to build sustainability in these brands. And so if you are someone that is in the middle of launching your product, or you're potentially struggling and you're ready to scale up, be sure to let me know below where in the process you are, because I'd love to really get to know who's here. So let's get into it. I'm going to be looking at my notes over here just to make sure we're into it. So first things first, before we get into how to find product market fit, I want to take a second to get on the same page and talk about what is product market fit and why is it something that is important for you to find. Finding product market fit is very similar, if not the same thing, to validating your product. So when someone says or asks you, what have you done to prove that there's demand for your product? That is another way of saying that you found product market fit. So product market fit really means finding a good market with a product that's capable of satisfying that market, and also that product has enough of a market to sustain itself and generate a profit before you start to focus on growth, etc. So that is a fancy way of saying that you have found your target customer, or your little slice of people online, a group online that is really excited about your product to a point where they buy your product potentially above the competition. So finding product market fit is all about getting really clear on who your product serves and knowing how to identify that market and knowing how to validate that that market is in fact the market that is going to benefit the most from your product in terms of actually buying your product. So when we talk about product market fit, it comes down to really, how do you prove that you have a viable business model? How do you prove that your product is something that will sell? Really, it comes down to identifying and validating who that target customer group is that is excited about your product and will be buying your product. And that's exactly what today's video is about, is how do you actually figure out when you have product market fit, and how do you even start to find product market fit? So let me know which part of the journey you're in below just by commenting on this video. Okay, so number one that we're getting into, because we have 3 things we'll get into today. Just gonna get some coffee because we're doing this video live. So number one, the secret to gain an edge over your competition without spending any money in any niche. So, you ready? This comes into taking the first step that a lot of brands don't do until later, which is focus on validating your product first by setting a hypothesis of who your customer groups are that are more likely to benefit from your product the most. So what this comes down to is there are two ways to sell a product. You can go the Amazon way, which is typically it's been given a bad reputation for white labeling products just by grabbing something off Alibaba, reselling it by slapping your brand on it. And when you do that, you find yourself in a sea of products on Amazon, online, because you're literally selling the same thing as everyone else. And those kinds of products are typically fads, or they're products where these sellers have identified a gap in the market that's been underserved, and they quickly bring a product to market, and then you find literally dozens of those things. And while white labeling was a really great way to get your feet wet and get some success online, unfortunately, those online sellers have a problem with competing based only on features and price. And that is not the way to build a sustainable $1 million plus brand. So the other approach that you want to take is solutions-based selling. So this is the idea of actually building a brand that serves a specific customer group. And so the first step in finding your product market fit in order to sustainably build a $1 million brand comes down to your ability to quickly figure out who is your target market that is going to benefit the most from your product. So I want to give you kind of a formula, which is how to get that edge. So finding an edge above your competition is in focusing on your human and having really a turnkey system to actually test quickly who your customer group is. So this word brings me to point number 2, which is how do you actually find product market fit? So here's where we want to start. And even if you are an established 7-figure seller, or you're just getting started, this process applies to you. And so let's jump into it. First thing you want to do before identifying your product market or validating your product market comes down to taking out a sheet of paper and brainstorming who in the world is most likely to buy your product. And these are what we call customer avatars. They are groups of people that will buy your product for one reason or another. So I'd like to use an example of, I got a ton of examples, but I'd love to use an example of a Jamstack. We'll have that. And then I'll give 2 examples today. So Jamstack is a electric guitar amplifier that helps you be able to play anywhere you want. How it works, you clip it to the bottom of your electric guitar, and in 30 seconds, you're up and playing. Why is this a problem? Because if you play electric guitar in the past before Jamstack, you would literally have to buy a ton of expensive equipment, big amps, and spend minutes and minutes and minutes connecting everything. So playing electric guitar wasn't super portable or accessible before Jamstack came along. So when we went to launch Jamstack, we had identified literally like 10 plus different use cases or 10 plus different kinds of people who would use the Jamstack. And so here's where we would start to write down like who is going to use the Jamstack. Well, number 1 is electric guitar players. Number 2, bassists, people who play the bass. I don't play bass, so I don't know how to call those people. Number 3, you would then have, okay, well, within the electric guitar space, there's different levels of guitarists. There's people who so aspiring guitar players, people who want to be able to play guitar. You have beginners, intermediate, advanced, professional. And within that, those groups would use Jamstack for different reasons, be it even people who would use it for busking, people who would use it for professional performances, people who would use it just at the cottage. And you could see like this list, if I were literally writing down this list right now, there's many, 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 many different kinds of customer groups that would use the Jamstack. But the problem is that if you go to speak to everybody, you speak to no one. And I actually have some data to back this up, where our very first Kickstarter campaign that we launched, Jamstack, before we had the success of a multi-million-dollar company, Jamstack, we launched on Kickstarter, and I think our demographics were just way too broad because we were literally trying to speak to every kind of type of guitar player, beginners, advanced, intermediate. And because of that, it became more of like a generalist product as opposed to something very specific and very niche. And that's something that within our first Kickstarter campaign, we only raised about 85,000. But when we went back to Indiegogo a few months later, one of the things that we fixed was we honed in and got super clear on so instead of trying to talk to 10 different people, like types of avatars, we narrowed it down to 2 or 3 as the main focus. And so because we specialized in and we narrowed our focus on that, we were able to then go and raise $350,000. And so that's a really good lesson on who you're speaking to. So when there's that in as example, number 2 is let's say that you are working on, you've developed an insole that helps it make it easier for people who've had running injuries post-surgery still be able to feel supported and not have to wear a knee brace. Well, in this case, we're looking at, all right, well, this product gives people who've had surgery or injuries still be able to enjoy sports and get on with life as a pain management tool. So in that case, what we could do is write down a whole bunch of different kinds of sports and kinds of people that would benefit from a product like this. And here you have golfers, you have triathletes, you have runners, and the list goes on and on and on and on. You've had people who've gone through ACL replacement surgery. You've had people who've just had injuries from triathlons that want to come back. Like there's so many. And so in this example, how do you then go from the hypothesis of, wow, we have 25 different avatars that can use this product? How do you go from that to actually proving product market fit? So the next step you want to have after you have written down all 25 kinds of avatars, you want to pause this video if you are watching the replay, and you want to have a serious look at this list and narrow it down to the top 2 to 3 avatars that are most likely to use your product. Not even most likely, but the ones who are going to benefit the most from your product. And that's where you want to start. Okay. And that's where you want to start. And know that when you've gone through these 2 steps of 1, brain dump, 2, narrowing it down, that when you do that, when you do narrow it down, what you now have in front of you is a hypothesis. So a hypothesis means that is something that's not proven, but it's a theory you have that now has to be put to the test to prove whether or not you have product market fit or enough demand to create a business off of and scale it to the magnitude that you're looking for within those customer groups, customer avatars. So that brings us to step 3, is actually the system that you want to use to test. So this brings me to number 3, the system you can use to find product market fit with your top avatar groups within as little as 6 weeks. So here's how you want to do it. There are 2 ways that we can do it. We can do it organic ways. We can do it paid ways. Let's talk about organic first. Organic means really things that you can do that the only thing you're trading is time, not money. So a few things you could do. Number 1, create an online community of your avatar. Number 2, get into online communities for your avatar and start conversations and start paying attention to who is resonating the most with your product. Go into these groups, really get feedback. Number 3 is ask your friends and family if they have anyone that falls in within those customer groups. So for example, if we look at Jamstack, one way that Chris was able to validate Jamstack way before Kickstarter was he was a guy that just had this idea for a guitar, and being handy as he is, he was able to build a really nasty looking prototype so that he could just play electric guitar everywhere. And one weekend he brought it up to a cottage, and he has a lot of guitarist friends. And so he just brings this thing to a cottage, not at this point expecting to build a business with this at all. But he like rocks it out, he brings it out, and his friends were just like, dude, what is this? And because he was able to get feedback from people within his niche, he knew that he was onto something. And at that moment, because of that validation, he decided to pursue it as a business. And here we are 5 years later. So there are different ways to test organically, but it really does come down to you going through the homework in step 2 of identifying who they are, and then looking around your network, looking online between Reddit subreddits and Facebook groups, and going to talk to your target market. And the second way to do it is the fastest way, which is paid. So paid, what you can do is, if you're using Facebook, Instagram ads as to run this test, what you can do is set up Facebook testing that specifically targets those kinds of groups, and paying attention to the metrics that come back from that. So in this case, what you can do, if you are testing it to build a wait list for your product, you can target, if we take the example of the insole. So what we could do for the insole that helps people get back into sports as a pain management tool is we can set up if our top groups are, we're going after hockey, we're going after basketball, and we're going after golf as our top 3 out of the 25 list. If we're going after those 3, then we can build interest profiles on Facebook and actually target those individual groups. And then based on someone who follows the NHL versus someone who follows Titleist versus someone who follows whatnot, when you have these interest profiles, when you're driving them to your website, there are certain metrics you can look at depending on the conversion objective you have. If you're looking to drive sales, or if you're looking to do more of a lead generation campaign to actually build your wait list pre-launch, either way, you can pay attention to certain stats like click-through rate. If there's a higher click-through rate when you focus on a certain demographic, if you have certain CPA, ROAS, etc. But you look at that and you can have a very structured and systemized approach to quickly targeting those groups by building interest profiles on Facebook, driving traffic to it over a 2 to 3 week period, and starting to pay attention to the data. Just like that. So when you essentially, finding product market fit is a system. It is something that can be done quickly with the right organization and the right process. So in summary, finding product market fit is going to be your way of rapidly testing different customer groups to see who resonates the most, so that you can focus your advertising on it. That matters because I know that we worked with like Swannies Sleep in Australia. And in the very, very, very beginning, when James and his brother got started with it, they didn't do this work. And, he's been public about this, but they didn't do this work. They created Swannick Sleep, which at the time was blue light blocking glasses. And that was the only thing they sold. And because it was 2 guys in their 40s, they thought that their customer group would be men in their 40s that wanted more health kick optimization, blah, blah, blah. And so they just had this theory, and they just started, they positioned all their marketing, all their targeting on those groups. And what was amazing is, well after they hit 7 figures, months into their journey, they thought, you know what, I wonder who's actually buying our product. And that's when they got curious. And then when they looked at the customer data, they were wrong. Instead of men in their 40s being their prime customer group, it was women ages 55 and up. So imagine how much profit was potentially lost, how if inefficient advertising and marketing spend happened, and how much revenue was lost because they did not focus their efforts on figuring out exactly who is buying their product and shifting all their marketing and their messaging to that. So this is something that established brands aren't even doing in the beginning. And just imagine if you figure out your North Star from day one, how lethal that is going to make you and how much of an advantage it is going to give you. So guys, we've been through a lot. And this brings me to the last point of this video. If you are someone that wants help with this process, either to validate an existing or a new product, or you want a turnkey system to get really clear on who your customer is and validate product market fit with your business, we have our Product Validation Academy where registration closes for it on Monday. So that is April 18th, and we start our new cohort on April 19th. So if you're someone who is interested in applying for that to work with me directly in the Product Validation Academy, we help eliminate some of the guesswork and expense of bringing new products to market through this 6-week intensive. All resources are below and linked to how you can apply for that. And outside of that, if you're watching this on the day we're going live, we actually have an early bird promotion on until Good Friday, which is tomorrow, April 15th. But apart from that, this was good. I love this topic. If you got value in this video, be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. But apart from that, I look forward to seeing you in our next video. Bye. Now I have to end the broadcast. Bye.